You clicked on this video because you want to learn about trauma. And let me tell you, it's not great. Trauma is the root cause of so many issues in our lives. People with unresolved trauma often end up leading destructive, isolated, lonely, and chaotic lives. Trauma is the root cause of so many of our compulsions, our addictive behaviors, our negative thought patterns, and our tendency to isolate. People with unresolved trauma often lead lonely, chaotic, isolated, and self-destructive lives. They're unable to connect in a meaningful way in romantic relationships. They are unable to develop lasting friendships, and many people with trauma suffer from chronic anxiety and low self-esteem. People with unresolved trauma will often unconsciously seek out coping mechanisms to deal with their pain. These coping mechanisms can lead their lives into a downward spiral of chaos and destruction, and at the very worst, these coping mechanisms can kill them. Now, on that very depressing note, I do believe that it is possible to address your past trauma, reconnect with your authentic self, and really live a healthy and full life. So all that is some really complicated psychology talk. What even is trauma? Trauma starts when we're small. It's important to know that trauma is something that happens inside you. It's not necessarily something that happens to you. While a parent hitting us or having an experience of sexual assault can be a traumatic event, trauma is when you disconnect from your authentic self and your emotions in response to a stressor. Trauma occurs when your need for survival or attachment is so great that you decide to disconnect from your authentic self and your emotions in order to preserve your attachment. Let's explain that. Our primary need as infants is attachment. When we are infants, we are the most helpless creatures in the entire world. To survive, we must attach to a caregiver who will fight off the wild dogs, who will love us, feed us, clothe us, and generally make sure that our needs are taken care of. Without that attachment, we're going to die. So this need for attachment is the most vital need in an infant's life. We desire this attachment so much that we will disconnect from our authentic selves and emotions in order to make sure that that attachment is secure. Let me explain. When a caregiver is hitting us, yelling at us, or reacting to our authentic selves or emotions in a negative way, we get scared. The message we get as infants is that kids who express their emotions and their authentic selves don't get loved and they don't get secure attachment. And if you express your authentic self and emotion, you're going to die because the primary caregiver will not form that level of attachment that you need with you. So we bottle up our emotions and our authentic selves in order to sustain that attachment. This is where the disconnection begins. Now there's one more term I want to define before we move on. That is the nervous system. In its most basic form, the nervous system is comprised of two parts. There's the sympathetic nervous system and there's the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system tells us when we are safe. When the parasympathetic nervous system is activated, we know that it is a time to rest, it's a time to digest food, and it's a time to love and laugh and heal our bodies and generally have a good time. Now, the sympathetic system is the opposite. The sympathetic nervous system evolved to keep us alive, and when it is activated, it tells our body that now is a time to run, to hide, or to fight. For example, if you're in the wild and a bear comes running at you, your sympathetic nervous system will be activated. Adrenaline will surge into your veins, and you will either fight, you will either run, or you will hide. Think of when your sibling hid behind a doorway and jumped out at you when you're coming through and you screamed. Your sympathetic nervous system was activated at this time. It's important to note that we evolved to only exist in the sympathetic nervous system for a very short time. A few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours at best. Then we would return to our parasympathetic nervous system. When we are traumatized, we can become chronically stuck in our sympathetic nervous system. This means we are always going to have heightened levels of fear and anxiety because we always fear that there is danger around, even when we are completely safe. This is the essence of PTSD. And oh my gosh, just look at the issues from this. If you are chronically stuck in a state of, oh my God, I am so scared, something's going to come get me, something's going to go wrong, imagine how your life is going to be. You're going to be socially anxious. You're going to be socially awkward. Of course you are. Of course you're going to have high anxiety. What else are you going to do? That's exactly what your nervous system has been telling you to do for the last 15, 20, 30, 40 years. This is the result of trauma. And oh my gosh, let's just talk about how we regulate that trauma. As humans, we need to regulate our emotions. It is a vital need. If you are chronically anxious in this state of high sympathetic arousal, you're going to regulate that any way you can. You might do this by smoking cigarettes. You might try and regulate by overeating. You might try and regulate by doing drugs. Like today, I felt sad, and usually I might go for a walk or a run or do yoga. But today I just ate chocolate chips. There are so many negative things that come from being stuck in this chronic state of hyperarousal, of sympathetic nervous system activation. The list is virtually endless. This is the reason why addressing your trauma is so incredibly important. As humans, we're always going to be faced with stressors in life. We're always going to have ups and downs in our emotions. If you're not, something's up. By addressing our trauma and choosing conscious ways to regulate our emotions, we can live full and healthy lives. When we look at and begin to resolve our past pain and trauma, not only can we start to regulate in conscious and healthy ways, we can begin to reconnect with our authentic selves and emotions. That reconnection is the essence of healing. No matter who you are, it's necessary to understand how trauma shapes you and how trauma causes us to regulate our emotions either in an unhealthy and destructive or a healthy and constructive way. None of us can truly become our authentic selves and become the best possible version of us without addressing our pain. That is why trauma is so important.